Welcome to this inaugural, what we hope will be a monthly or at least every 2 month series of Design Bytes. Basically 15 minutes of super exciting information that you can enjoy in your lunch break or afternoon tea break, and then we'll have 15 minutes of conversation. And to kick us off today, it's of course myself, Professor Yvonne Miller, Director of the QUT Design Lab, and my wonderful colleague, Associate Professor Deb Cushing, and we're talking about a book that we're under deadline to write and finish very quickly. We're nearly finished. We've got 6 weeks left to write it. It's a follow-up from a previous book, Creating Great Places, and this book is about redesigning the unremarkable. And we're just going to talk through our thoughts and our ideas, and we welcome you to have a conversation afterwards. Of course, at the outset, I'd like to acknowledge traditional owners of the lands where we are today, Turrbal and Yagara people here at QUT at Gardens Point, and pay my respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits. I recognise these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning, and so it's really appropriate that we're here today to have a bit of a conversation about how we might redesign these lands to be much more remarkable than they are right now. So the premise for our book, Redesigning the Unremarkable, arose from this notion that actually, unfortunately, too much of our built environment is actually unremarkable. It is actually invisible and neglected. And although there's a lot of money put into big ticket items, such as the redesign of the golf course next to Calvin Grove, for us locally, we actually don't think very often about those everyday elements of the built environment, the streets, the seating, the trash and recycling bins, the bus stops, the parking lots. We don't think about how those could be designed to be more engaging and to give us a greater quality of life. And that really is the remit for this book, or the origins at least.
And so we asked ourselves why do we want to actually write this? What was our purpose? So we say that design is actually never neutral. So we take the premise that urban elements and spaces are far too often unremarkable, as Yvonne was just saying, yet they have unlimited potential. So we can really make them great spaces. So they can contribute to vibrant urban life that fosters healthy living. And we really hope to question why things are done in certain ways, and challenge all the people, all the designers, all the policymakers, all of you, to really rethink how they're creating these spaces and elements, and make them actually better. So the premise for our book was underpinned by 3 key theories. So the first one is, which some of you may be familiar with, is broken windows theory. And Wilson and Kelling came up with this in 1982. So it's been quite a while. So it talks about the fact that minor visual elements of disorder, such as litter, graffiti, broken windows, they can really communicate a disregard for maintenance, for care, and they actually become an invitation for further crime and further antisocial behavior. So when people see these in their environment, such as the photos here, it actually sends a message that, people don't actually care about their environment and the places that they are actually living. The other theory, one of the other theories, is cues to care theory, and this is Joan Nassar came up with this in 1995, so again, some time ago now. And this actually started in landscape restoration, that realm. And it's talking about culturally appropriate symbols, or cues, that actually signal human intention toward maintenance and care for the environment. And the idea was that if we actually include some culturally appropriate things in our environment, like just a simple pathway or a mown strip, that actually sends a message to us when we're, so it's not a messy landscape, it's actually something that people are actively caring about. So they send this idea of a purpose, and really to meet the needs of all users. And we think that this is appropriate to apply to an urban environment as well, not just a restoration landscape. The final theory that we've used is actually nudge theory. And this was from Thaler and Sunstein from 2008. And nudge theory argues that people can be persuaded in their environment to make better decisions about their health and well-being, about the things that they actually do, so the activities that they participate in, or the things like buying something or doing physical activity. So the idea is these are simple, non-coercive changes in the environment, and those are called nudges. So just like a simple nudge. This choice is still there, so it's not taking away that choice, but it's actually providing a nudge in the direction of the healthier choice. And so the idea is a nudge is any aspect of the choice architecture that alters people's behavior in a predictable way without forbidding any options or significantly changing their economic incentives. And so this is applied to multiple contexts.
So we want to take those theories and apply them to 3 global priorities. So essentially, we're going to look at these features of the urban environment and say, how can we redesign them to be sustainable, to be salutogenic, that is to foster health and well-being, and to be playable, that is to be more fun. And those are the principles that kind of underpin how we might redesign these 9 unremarkable elements and spaces that we want to redesign. And they are very much, some are more remarkable than others, and some have had more research and practice and policy attention than others. So I think a lot of us know that there's a lot of research attention and policy and practice attention on how we might redesign streets to be more livable, more walkable. But we don't think very often about like under highways or parking lots or benches or chairs or trash bins or stairs or walls and fences. And so what we're doing is we're taking these elements and redesigning them. And the first one we're going to talk about is how you might redesign a seat.
So the idea of sitting down, it could be benches, chairs, tables, anywhere we actually sit in our environment. So looking at some of these examples, it's designing benches or the seats to raise awareness. The Red Bench is actually this program around the Brisbane, Southeast Queensland area. And so it's to raise awareness of domestic violence. So it sends a message. The Story Seat, is talking about, it's done with the libraries. So idea to share stories, to get people to actually sit and talk and share their ideas. The one on the, this one here has actually recycled items embedded into it. So it's sending message about littering and, picking up the trash, that kind of thing. And the other one is just, a fun way to make social, like a staircase, actually more sociable and provide people to actually sit and talk and, be together.
And of course, we can't think about seats without thinking about rubbish bins. And actually, most of us don't spend much time thinking about rubbish bins. And I just want us to think, we want to challenge that thought about, we kind of throw our waste away and we don't really think about where it goes or how it's recycled or how much we produce. So there's lots of different ways to think differently about this. These are some of the images of my favorite rubbish bins. I love the top one. And it's basically turning disposable cigarette butts into voting. So I don't know if you can see, but it sort of says, who's the best player in the world? Is it Orlando or some other soccer player? And then the bottom right is actually saying the rubbish bins we use at home in our own houses actually should be clear and see-through so that people get a sense of how much rubbish you're disposing of. And if we change the design of these, we may indeed actually foster sustainability. And I want to read a poem from a waste activist, Jacqueline Ottoman, that talks about making rubbish and waste disposal processes visible. It's called The Girls with the Jars. I'm always amazed at those zero waste girls with their mason jars, at their big proclamations. Here is all the trash I generated last year. Inside each jar is usually a tiny jumble of twistums from the broccoli, a few tabs of those little plastic tabs that keep the bread bags tight, and a colourful array of produce stickers. Although I'm a bit sceptical, I do appreciate that they give a damn. I thank them for making me think. What if at the end of each year, we all had to show the world how much trash we created? Would we shout so loudly? How big a jar would we need? And our conversation in this chapter really is to think about how can we design out this need for rubbish, and how can we think differently about the design of rubbish bins and also landfills. Oh. Stairs, of course, are also something else to be thought about, and particularly if we can design stairs to be attractive and playable. I think most of us probably heard of the piano stairs, which are on our front page, where you can make songs by jumping on the stairs up and down. And increasingly, stairs are used. We want people to use stairs rather than elevators in terms of building up their physical activity and exercise. But too often, I don't know about you, but I've got this kind of commitment where I take the stairs rather than the elevator as long as it's under 4 stories, and often the doors are locked and you can't get through. So we want to have a conversation about how can we design stairs that are exciting, that are central, and that are playable and sustainable. So looking at designing stairs made out of bamboo and other recyclable components.
So blocking out, this idea of walls, fences, and barricades. And I think too often this idea of blocking out kind of sets up a negative perception. And we see, chain link fences to, in residential areas, or we see, there's this negative idea of kind of a wall or a fence. But we're taking this to redesign that and figure out how we can communicate important messages. So a lot of places around the world actually use murals on walls because they're like a blank canvas. So to communicate some messages, important cultural messages, to spark ideas, to get people moving. So that kind of nudge. Some of these images are actually from the Gardens Point, the new mural on one of the walls here just outside of D Block. But then also we can use walls and fences to actually create sustainable environments. So green walls are a common thing that we see nowadays, and they can help, for sustainability and actually reducing glare or reducing sort of the heat that's generated or emitted from a surface, and so reducing the heat island effect. So different things that we can do to create better walls and fences. Going places is bikeways and trails, and there has actually been quite a lot of research on these because it's a major physical activity or transport element. And so redesigning them to actually be more fun, be playful. Here we have glow-in-the-dark paint that they've used in different areas to actually make it usable at night, safer. And then some of these images are around Brisbane or Southeast Queensland, kind of this area, just to make it, if we design these spaces better, a lot of times it's just very simply asphalt paving and nothing else, which is fine. That's a good start. But if we can actually show care, so these little nudges like on the Centennial Bikeway, counting the number of people, so it kind of creates a game of it. So you're challenged to actually increase the number, things like that, and just family time. So, making these spaces actually more intergenerational and providing those nudges to create better spaces.
And one of the sort of bigger components we've looked at is actually shopping centres. And shopping centres are a very interesting part of our urban environment because right now, particularly in our post-COVID and our online shopping environment, actually not many people go to shopping centres or numbers are declining. So shopping centres are having to rethink what is their purpose, what is their remit, what is their licence to operate? Is it a place for communities to gather? So rather than being all about retail, can it be about entertainment and can it be about bringing people together, whether it's mall walking for seniors, so kind of exercise, is it kind of places of fun? This is a redesign of Funan in Singapore, and you can see in the bottom left is actually that red thing that you can see is actually an internal bikeway. So they're encouraging people to actually bike around the shopping centre, so to be physically active. And there's a free, on the right-hand side, a rock climbing wall. On this roof, there's an urban farm and an urban garden, and they're running that in part as a social enterprise, so bringing people together. So it's about shopping centre owners and retailers know they have to redefine their purpose to survive. And so we're thinking about different ways these might be repurposed for the future. Possibly my favourite chapter to write has been about parking lots, because none of us think very much about parking lots, but actually there's a lot to think about parking lots. One, parking lots might even not exist in 10 years if we see a future of self-driving cars. So we need to rethink the role of parking lots. Can they be changed? Can they be redesigned as spaces of play and of fun and of health and activity? So a lot of parking lots post-COVID or living with COVID in Paris and in other places in Europe are actually taking back parking lots in the cities and giving them to communities, asking them to redesign, to vote on what they would like them to be. Can they be places for gardens, for kids, for elders to sit and be? This is an example here. You can see it's actually the top of a parking building is a playground with a great view, and it's a space for exercise and for gathering. So there's lots of different ways of redesigning sort of what would be traditionally perhaps a neglected element of a built environment.
Then we have hiding under, which is leftover spaces under highways and overpasses. And oftentimes these places become where we see a lot of homeless people or negative sort of antisocial behavior happening because it's sort of dark and wet and no one actually wants to spend time there. So we're looking at different ways we can actually redesign those to make them more useful for more users. So this, examples in Sydney or actually here in Brisbane where they've actually created park spaces under these. So using shade tolerant plants, these cool spaces actually could be great when it's the heat of the summer. So redesigning those or using artwork, the mural in Rockhampton, just, something creative and fun and adding color so it brightens up that space, or, usable spaces. So a lot of skate parks sometimes are under these underpasses, but also, rock climbing walls. So areas where you need space to do it, and you can, design it appropriately so that that's not a negative in other contexts.
And finally, we've got streets and alleyways. And I think we all know the importance of redesigning those as spaces for children, slowing down the speed of cars, and reclaiming that space so that it's for people and places, and it's not for a place for transport. It's actually about redesigning the streets so that people want to walk to school and they're actually out there playing rather than dodging cars. So that was a 15-minute race through of, the narrative and the rationale for our upcoming book, Redesigning the Unremarkable, where we would love if you've got any great ideas of photos or case studies, you can send them to us, because we're going to spend the next sort of 6 weeks finalising our text to get it off to the publishers. But we really want to thank you for making the time to come along to the first Design Bytes series. I hope that we've crammed a lot of information into this 15 minutes. And if you would like to be the next person to speak, reach out to me or Shelley. And now I think we're going to take questions. If anyone's got questions, we're going to go to start. Yes, playfulness is so key about rubbish bins. You're right, Tatiana. There's a great one. I didn't have a chance to include it, of basketball. So you actually can play basketball with rubbish, throwing it in. Yes, the fun factory, the trash. We've got that, Judy. Actually, do you want to answer that one about the
spontaneous? Yes, and we're the DIY idea, or guerrilla gardening. Yes, we are kind of bringing that element into it.
That's a really good point, though, Tatiana. Can I make sure that we save this, because I'm not sure that we've talked about enough in our introduction of our book about individual, council, community, state research, like who directs it. Does that make sense? I think that's a really, really good point. Parking lots below sports fields. No, not the winter musical fence. I haven't even heard of that. Have you heard of that?
No, winter.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. What else we got? Yes, cycling. I don't know if I know about cycling in Brisbane car parks. Thanks, Brett. Yes, the BW fun theory is a critical part. I think we're all friends here, so feel free to unmute yourself and have a conversation and unvideo yourself. Turn yourself off. Turn yourself on. It's Monday. It feels like Friday. The problem is these are all great, and we've got most of these in here. Our challenge has been to try and write less, not more, in some ways. We actually, just so you know, maybe we can reflect on the book writing process. So originally when we proposed this, we were going to have inclusive design as one of our kind of design priorities. Snow skiing, I've got that one. Yes, in the Mall of Emirates. Yes, but that would be great. Yes, that's Abby. Some photos would be good. Yes. So true, Marcus. I hope everyone's looking at that. There's this great thing about redesigning parking lots to be wilderness, basically. So not tidy, but actually purposely wild. And then actually I forgot to mention that in terms of rewilding. That's exactly right, Brett. But then being there as bioswales, so that potential when there's floods and things like that, if we can redesign our urban environment, so all the space beside where it might flood can actually absorb the water. And street calming, it's a really good point. Really important to basically redesign our urban environment to be good. The chat, please, if you got, I know because of COVID, Deb and I haven't managed to travel as much as we wanted to go take 1,000 photographs. So if you do have photographs of things, please just email them to us with your name, and we can reference you as a photographer, and you can claim on tax your next trip. You can say you're a public photographer. That is not advice, actually. Talk to your own tax accountants. Does anyone else have any questions? Does anyone want to put their hand up to be the next exciting presenter? I was going to say the next victim.
The next victim. No, this was fun. It was actually really good to just, get us to put it all down. We hadn't created a PowerPoint for this book, so this was great.
It was good. 15 minutes
to get feedback.
I felt that we really raced through things in the 15 minutes. And
it's a work in progress, so we are still kind of revising and finishing.
But actually, could I just say, if you've got any great ideas, find a cool person to collaborate with, like not Deb because she's mine. And then actually, it does actually, we found it really enjoyable.
Oh my gosh, yeah. This is like the best time. This is like the best part of my job.
Right? Because you actually get to deep dive, like I've deep dived into the design of parking lots, and then you find some really cool parking lots, like the one I showed with the the basketball court on the very top of it. And actually they've got a staircase going up the side of that. I think it's a 5-story parking lot. It's really cool. And you get to email the architects, they send you the pictures, and you have a really good conversation.
Yeah.
So it's been we have personally really enjoyed writing these kind of books because we get to deep dive into things that interest us.
Stuff. Explore.
It is time consuming though, so just
it is, but
we like
fun.
it. Yes, okay, I see there's a note here from Lindy who's putting her hand up. That's great. Elisa, Diana, Phil, Dean, Mugay and Co. That's right, their teaching and learning book has just been submitted. So actually, yes, you can be, maybe you guys can be the next up. That would be great, just to raise awareness. Any more questions? I feel like we're covering them all. Yes, please buy and read the book and recommend it to all your libraries and your students. Like, just joking.
We have to finish it first.
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of zero waste at Mona, actually, Ben. We'll check it out.
Yeah, they've got really cool bins as well.
Okay.
Like the
what kind of
messaging.
bin?
Sorry, on their waste bins, they have this nudge which says you can recycle this, or you can just commit it to never being used again, or something or other. I've taken a photo. I'll try and dig it up.
Yeah, if you can scan it, that would be really good.
But they've got absolutely zero waste right throughout their whole complex at Mona. Yeah, and they put it into a poo machine as well, which is pretty cool in an art piece.
That sounds really cool. If you got photos, that would be great. Yeah, Lindy, using this as a framework is pushing about, you'd love to use it as a framework for your design studios. I think that's a really good idea, because what we've tried to do is say you can engage with theory and you can engage with priorities in a really unusual way. Do you know what I mean? Like in a playable way.
Yeah. So we have the idea based on our first book. We have the theory storming idea, and so then we were going to take that and then kind of readapt it to sort of using these
priorities.
And
a reminder for those of you who haven't read our first book called Creating Great Places, Evidence-Based Design for Health and Wellbeing. Essentially in there we outline, I've forgotten, I think 6 theories and then 4 global priorities. Look at this, look at our marketing. But then we say you can theory storm it. So you can say, right, I want to redesign this plate to be, and you've got to redesign it to be sustainable, playable, through the lens of prospect refuge theory and through the lens of affordance theory, and kind of gamify it. And it's really, I think we found it quite a lot of fun using it with our students and in workshops. Just to force people to think outside the box about how might I redesign something through the lens of either theory or a global priority. Yep.
And then understand that there are multiple theories out there, so that it's not just one. You kind of get it into your head that it's just one way to do things, but it's not, there's not. And so you have to think of multiple different implications of the design decisions that you make.
And so, yeah, I think it was in conversations actually with Natalie Wright that we came with this idea of theory storming. It's built on Edward de Bono. It was
hats.
Thank you.
Hats.
Yeah.
Colored hats.
Yeah, colored hats.
Yeah.
Thinking hats. Thinking
yeah,
hats.
thinking hats.
This is post-COVID brain struggling. So be careful. Hey. What else we got? I think that's probably enough. Good. People are saying that we're legends, and which, so true. Thanks for making us smile today. Yeah, we are happy, smiley people who are going to be head down writing for the next 2 months. Yes. I think we're supposed to submit this either the end of July or early August. I think. So please send us any photographs you've got in the next couple of weeks, and please also put your hand up if you want to be the next person to do a design bite, so that we continue this sort of community of practice where we have a conversation and you know what people are up to.
Yeah, it's fun to kind of hear about what everybody's doing. So this is great.
Yeah, particularly in these, living with COVID times where sometimes we're not face to face all the time. We don't see each other in the office. It's nice to know what we're up to. Thank you for making the time. Yes, it was a great book project. We encourage you to do it yourselves.
Yes.
We're happy to talk about, how to make that happen. And we highly recommend working in a peer.
Yes. Fun.
Enjoyable. Yeah. Because it does force working as a team. It makes it not lonely.
And then you have somebody to be accountable for.
Yeah. So that's it. We will come back to you guys when we have actually got the book published and finished, and we can talk about it more. But please, thanks for all your wonderful and like resources. This is like crowdsourcing ideas and resources. It's really brilliant. Like some of these we knew about, but especially you, Tiziana, for this notion of thinking about the levels of engagement. Do you know what I mean? I think that, you know, community, council, state, you know, it's a nice reframing. Actually, everybody.
Yes, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.